Hello and welcome to the Marvelous Snapper, where we have the biggest sunspot energy. We aim to make portrait style video for free to play players of Marvel Snap, but everyone is welcome. Today we're just gonna quickly review the OTA changes that have quickly made themselves available in the client. So let's have a quick read. May 4th, balance updates. As we're working on this update, the Marvel Snap metagame has a good amount of variety and players experimenting with new strategies, so we won't be rocking the boat too much. Last week featured 4 changes we're still waiting to fully evaluate, so this week we'll just include a few small buffs to cards that could use a little more love. That sounds really good. Orca, old, a 6/9. With an ongoing ability, plus 5 power if this is your only card here. New, the same but 2 more power. So 6/11 with an ongoing ability, plus 5 power if this is your only card here. This isn't very complicated. Orca released low, consistently one of our least played cards and weak on win rate. He's especially vulnerable to splash damage in a metagame where being able to counter Galactus has a high priority for players. So the solve should clearly involve raising his floor, a Zion term for the card's weakest outcome. Just buffing his base power also keeps his ongoing symmetrical with Namor's, further focusing on their fishy feud. We don't expect to see Orca suddenly start tearing up the competitive ranks, but it's free for us to make him stronger. That's really good. I think that's a very appropriate change for a card that doesn't see much competitive play. I think you do see him a lot in those sort of ongoing kind of lists where you have Mr. Fantastic, Claw, trying to add power to his lane, and a little bit of Hobgoblin or Green Goblin in the same lane as well. Maybe a bit of Onslaught to double the Claw and Mr. Fantastic power. But I'm glad that Orca is getting a bit of love, and we might be able to see him played a slight bit more. The Collector, old, a 2/1. When a card enters your hand from anywhere except your deck, plus 1 power. The new is a now 2/2 card, so just 1 more power, and then the same ability. When a card enters your hand from anywhere except your deck, plus 1 power. Those of us who were playing in the beta no doubt remember the glory days of the Collector, and the nerf that was merited then brought him in line as an on-curve player in some discard and Devil Dinosaur decks. However, he's been largely squeezed out of those archetypes since without finding a new home. Hopefully, he'll be a bit more competitive with other 2-cost cards at this rate and start earning those slots back or showing up in new decks like Bounce. That's interesting. We know that the Collector Bundle is now currently in the store, but that Collector Bundle is a very good ratio of real dollary dues to tokens that has ever been published in the game. But I don't think this is an incentive to buy the tokens bundle. But the Collector, I don't really see a lot. I see some with those decks with Quinjet, Agent Coulson, Moon Girl, trying to get a lot of cheap cards into play. But other than that, other deck that would use it is like the Helicarrier Collector Discard deck. I don't really see him used outside of that very much. So a 1 increase in base power, the Collector's to increase his power, it's not always the easiest, and those decks aren't generally top meta decks anyway, so it's good to see that. Luke Cage, old, 2/1, ongoing, your cards can't have their power reduced. New, just 1 more power, so 2/2, ongoing, your cards can't have their power reduced. The 2 most popular decks with Luke are mid-league performers on the numbers. I assume that's Cerebro and the Hazmat deck. And the Surge and Super Scroll plus the buff to Enchantress have both indirectly weakened power. Both indirectly weakened him. We actually considered testing 3 power briefly, but recalled how the Hazmat buff to 2 power months ago killed a delightful Cerebro 1 deck. This change thus restores that combo as an interesting option for Cerebro 2, since Luke protects that deck from a handful of meddling locations as well. The added power makes Luke more viable as a tech card in other decks, which might come in handy if Afflict strategies reach a new high in the near future. That is High Evolutionary that's coming out. So that's good. Luke Cage, I very rarely see. Hazmat, that kind of deck hasn't really been super popular. And Cerebro I have seen around. And yeah, as the developers said, the performance can be middling and affected by location. So I'm glad that Luke Cage got a bit of love. Thanks for tuning in. We're still gathering data on these OTA changes, OTA updates, and observing the impact on your play experience. So we appreciate all of the passion and feedback around around these weekly changes. Sorry, I've been distracted. We don't have a decision yet on whether or not the cadence of these OTA balance changes will continue at a weekly pace through more of the summer. So thanks in advance for your patience on that front, and we look forward to communicating more soon. Happy snapping! In terms of the frequency of the updates, they're doing it more frequently than I would expect. I wouldn't be surprised if they tuned it down to like every 2 weeks, but I really like the weekly updates, and these balances are very appropriate. I think Luke Cage, the Collector, and Orca are very appropriately balanced in this particular update. I don't think the vast majority of players will have any complaints with these updates. Hopefully you found this useful, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye now.